Welcome back. So now we are going to design our client-side view of WebSockets server game, and in order to create this same view we basically need to first of all create an HTML file. Then we are going to style it with CSS style file, and then we are going to dynamically modify as the game progresses using JavaScript. So let's start with our HTML first. We are using Visual Studio Code as our editor. First of all, we have to create a HTML file. We are going to name it client.html. Okay, and we are going to generate boilerplate code, save it, and we are starting our server. We are going to shrink its size so that we can in one half of our screen we want to see the coding, and in another half we want to see the changes in our browser. Let's see. Okay, the HTML file basically consists of a bunch of divs mostly. The body element consists of only two elements. First one represents this h1 element and the second one represents this container. So that's why we are going to call this div a container. So within this container div we have again two divs. One represents this sidebar and another one represents the, let's say, main bar. So within this sidebar we have few buttons. We have connect button to connect to the WebSockets. We have new game button to create a new game. Then we have this label, and underneath this label we have a list of games. When we connect to the server, if we have a list of games already created by other clients and waiting for a player to join in, we will see them over here. And if we select one of those games and click join button, we will be part of that new game. And in the right side we have another div which we are going to call board, because this is actually going to represent the Tic Tac Toe board. And within Tic Tac Toe board we have 9 divs, each div representing a cell of our Tic Tac Toe game. So let's start coding. So within body we need an h1 element, online Tic Tac Toe. Besides this h1 element we need a div and this div's class ID is container. Within this container we have two divs. One represents the sidebar and another div represents the right sidebar, so we are going to call it main bar. So we need a div with the class ID sidebar, and we need another div with the class ID main bar. Within this sidebar we have a button with the class name, let's say CNT, connect button. We have another button to create new games, so we are going to call it CRT BTN. We need a label which will say available games. Now we need to create an unordered list for our list of games that are available to be joined in. So within this unordered list we only have just one list item element in our HTML code. The rest are going to be added or removed dynamically using JavaScript. It says new games. Okay, now in our main bar we need another div with board class, and within this board class we need 9 divs with sale as its class ID times 9. Oh, we have missed out actually one more button to join the game, so we need this one underneath unordered list button Okay, so this is how our HTML looks. So we are going to style it with our CSS file next, and for that we are going to create a CSS file. So we are going to name it style.css, and we are going to link this style file to our HTML file style.css. Okay, this is how our HTML file looks without any styling. So let's start styling our HTML file. The first thing that we need to do is remove all the default headings and margins associated with all HTML elements. So for that we are going to use asterisk, because then it applies to all the HTML elements. So we are going to make heading 0 and margin 0. It is always a good idea to strip away all the default margin and paddings with all HTML elements, so that you know for sure there is no margin and padding, and then you can give margin and paddings of your own choice if you want to, and it doesn't create conflicts with default margin and paddings of other HTML elements. Since we are going to use before and after pseudo elements, we need to strip their margin and paddings as well. For that we are going to say asterisk colon before comma asterisk double colon after. So it means after pseudo elements of all the HTML and before pseudo elements of all the elements, they should also be applied this styling, which is basically says remove the margins and remove the paddings. So if you use just asterisk, it doesn't apply to pseudo elements. Now check this out. You know how congested they look compared to when I had not used this styling. Okay, now in our body element we are going to just set its background color. So first of all we are going to choose a color. So I'm going to choose this color for background. So we have background color, and we are going to paste this one because it's a hexadecimal code, so we need to put a hash. So now you saw the color has been applied. Now we need to start styling our h1 element. Okay, what shall we do with our h1 element? The first thing is we want this text to be displayed in the center, and we do this by setting its text align property to center. Okay, now what shall we need to do next? We want to sandwich basically this text between two horizontal lines, and for that we are going to utilize before and after pseudo elements of our h1 element. So say before. So whenever we use before or after pseudo elements, the first thing that we must set is its content property. If we don't set its contents property, nothing will be visible because we don't want any text in our before pseudo element. So we are going to put empty quotations. The next thing is that we want to display a horizontal line. So we are going to set its horizontal lines height and width and its color. So let's start with height is, let's say, 2 pixels, and width is 100% of viewing window. So depending on our device, whatever the device width is, it's going to be the 100% of that device. So that's why we are using viewing width as our unit. Okay, so far we haven't seen anything. Now to be able to see our horizontal line, we are going to change its background color property. Copy this one, and so background color is okay. We still can't see any so to make our horizontal line appear, we have to set its position to absolute. Okay, we can see a line, but it starts from the middle of our browser and we want it to cover whole of the browser width. So for that we are going to set it left property to 0, And as you can see, now we have a horizontal line across our browser. Okay, now we need similar settings for our h1 after c2 element. So we are going to put it over here. We can't see any after horizontal line, and that's because both have position absolute, and so they are taking absolute position with respect to our browser, which is its parent. So we need to move it slightly down. So for that we need to set its top property, which should be few pixels lower than h1. We haven't set any top attribute for before c2 element because we want it at the top position. So now we have to bring our after horizontal line few pixels down, so that's why we have to set it. So we are separately going to define this property after, and we have to set its top to, let's see where does our 5 pixel takes us. Okay, now you can see there are 2 separate lines, so we need to make it, let's say, okay, probably 30. Slightly lower, let's 33. That's better. So we are done with our h1 styling. We can change the text color as well, but you know, I leave it up to you. I don't want to overwhelm you guys, but if you like, you can change the text color as well with the color property. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is style our container div. So we are okay. The first thing is we want to define its size and bring it to the center of our browser. So in order to figure out its size, we need to define its border first. So we want it to be 2 pixels solid and let's say black. Okay, we can't see any difference, so we need to define its height and width parameters. So width is going to be, what should be the width? Let's say 60% of viewing width. So no matter what screen you have, it is going to occupy the 60% of that one. And then we need to define height. Let's make it 70% of viewing height. So whatever the height of your browser is or your screen is, height is going to occupy 70% of that one. So let's save it. Why can't we see any? Oh, okay. So our div is called container. It has still no use. Oh, so we still can't see any change. That's because we are looking for any div with the class container, but if you check over here, I have missed an n over here, so that's why it wasn't showing. Now look, we have a box. Oh, I have got 20 pixel border. Oh, this is much better. Okay, now the next task is we have to bring this container into the center. And how do we do this? Well, there are many ways. So what we are going to do is we are going to define its top property and its left property. We want to be 20% down with respect to its top. So at the top, so it is, let's say, 13% down of viewing height. This 13%, we want it a bit further. Let's say 23, no effect. Why hasn't it any effect? Left is 20, viewing width. Oh, it's because we haven't defined the position. Position is absolute. Okay, now we can see this. It's in the center, but we need to bring it up. That's better. Okay, now comes the sidebar and main bar parts. So let me check the names, class names first. This is sidebar and main bar. Okay, so we want our sidebar to occupy let's say 25% of our container, and we want the main bar to occupy 75% of this container. The best way to do is make the display of our container to be grid. The display is grid, and we want our grid style to be grid template columns. So we are going to define grid template columns, and the first one should be 25% and the second one should be 75. Okay, so now let's start styling our sidebar. First of all, we need a slightly darker shade than background color, so let's choose a background color. Okay, copy. Background color is going to be pasted. This is background color. Are we happy with this color? I don't think so, but let's keep it this way for the time being. Now let's give a color to our main bar. Okay. I don't like these two colors, so let me change. Let this one to be the color of our main bar, sidebar, sorry. Yeah, that's better. Okay, now the next thing is, now we have to start styling these buttons, and the first thing that we need to do is bring all these into the center. And for that, what shall we do? Well, we need to set its display to flex, and the flex flow property should be set to column. Now you can see, so they have come into one column flow, but the only problem now remains is they are not in the center, and to bring them to the center we need to set its justify content property to center. Justify center, there we go. Now we need to style these buttons, so every button is going to have the same style, so we are going to define this property on the button element, not on its classes, because classes are different, and if we use the button element itself, so it's going to apply same style to all the buttons. We are going to apply the same style for our label as well. We have to choose a color for our buttons. So again, let's go back to our color palette and choose a color, this one. Copy, set its background color property to, oh, that's great. Well, we can apply many styles. We can change the font size, style, family, and many things, but in order to keep it simple, the only thing I'm going to do is create some space between these buttons. So I'm going to set just the margin top of those to be, let's say, 4 pixels each. So now we can see there is some space. So this one has a margin top of 4 pixels, but we can't see because there is no element above it. Create has a margin top of 4 pixels, label has a margin top of 4 pixels, and even join has a margin top of 4 pixels. Okay, so far we are not going to apply any more styles in order to keep the length of our video shorter. Okay, so next thing, what shall we do? We need to do some styling for our unordered list elements. The first thing that we need to do is we need to remove this style. So we are going to set the list style property to none because we don't want anything. Okay, what else shall we require? So far we don't want anything. The one thing, we want our cursor to turn into a pointer when it hovers over these buttons. We want this effect over buttons only, not on labels, and then on list item. So pointer, so same. Great. Okay, that's enough styling for our sidebar. We have already changed the color of main bar. Do we need any other styling for main bar itself? No, I don't think so. So let's move on to our board div. So again, the first thing is we need to see its border in order to figure out where it actually is on our browser. Then we'll style it, and then later on we will remove this border if we don't want it. So let's start with border. Again, 1 pixel, solid and black. Okay, where is it? Oh, that's because, as you can see, we can see only a slightly thicker line just over here. It means this is our whole board div. Because our board div is currently empty, there are no contents, so it's not occupying any space. That's why we can only see slightly thicker outline over here. It is basically this is basically the amount of space our board is currently occupying. So we need to define its width and height. So we want it to be, to do that we are going to set width and height attributes to make it visible. So width is going to be 7% of its ancestor, and height should also be 70% of its ancestor's height. So the ancestor happens to be, in this case, main bar. So it is occupying 70% of main bar width and 75% of main bar's height. Now the next thing that we need to do is bring this border div in the center. And how do we do that? We have to set the margin to auto, but it has only adjusted horizontally. But what about the top one? So margin auto does not apply to vertical alignment. We have to manually set the margin top to be let's say 18% down. I think we should bring it a little bit down, further down. That's better. Now what we need to do is we have to remove this border because we don't want this. We only put it there because we wanted to see actually where that div is. Okay, now let's start styling our set elements. Okay, in order to align cell elements, we have to set its parent, that is board's display property, to grid, and now we have to set its grid template columns to be we want 3 columns per row, and its size should be auto. One more thing, we have to set its justify content property to center as well. Now let's define cells width and height. So we want let's give width and height to be 100 pixels and see how does it look. 100 pixels, and in order to see actually we have to give it border 1 pixel, solid, let's say black. This is how they look. We want this space to be removed, and for that we are going to set its align content property to be center as well. Okay, now what we need to do next is we have to remove these outlining borders only. So for that we need to remove the top border of first, second and third cells. So we are going to use cell first child, nth child, which is 2 colon nth child 3, and set its border top to none. Okay, we have to do the similar thing for the bottom ones. So copy it, So instead of first, we will say last child, and this is last child, this is 8th child, and this is 7th child. This is 8th and this is 7th, and we have to remove its border bottom. What happened? Oh, this is last child. Next we need to remove left border for cell number 3, 4 and 5. So we are going to use formula cell nth child, but in its argument we are going to say 3n. So when n is 0, it's going to be 0. When n is 1, it's going to be 3. When n is 2, it's going to be 6. And when n is 3, it's going to be 9. So 3, 6 and 9. And we want its border right to be none. We have to do similar thing for left side border. So we want cell 1, 4 and 7. 3n plus 1. So when n is 0, 3n is going to be 0. 0 plus 1 gives us 1. When n is 1, 3 times 1 is going to give us 3, and then plus 1 gives us 4. And then when n is 2, it's going to give us 7. So we have to put plus 1 over here, and we want left border removed. Okay, so far so good. Now next we want to create the cross and circle symbols, and for that we need to style our before and after pseudo elements of cell. Okay, but the thing is, we need two different styles for before and after pseudo elements of each cell. One is going to be the cross and another is going to be a circle. So that's why it's not just enough to have a before and after for a div with just cell class. So we want to have before and after for an element which has a cell class as well as, let's say, circle class. Likewise, we want to define a before pseudo element for cell class as well for a div which has not only a cell class but circle class. This will apply to a div which has a cell as well as circle classes, and that should create a circle in that div, and we want similar one for our cross. Okay, let's start with cross first because I find it easier. Okay, in the before part we want one leg of the cross, and in the after pseudo element we want the other leg of our cross. So let's start with before first. As always, first of all we have to set its content property to empty, but we must define it, otherwise we won't be able to see any styling. Now we want background color to be, the color should be same as our horizontal and vertical lines that we defined for our h1 element. So Control C. We want same color for after. Okay, I was working in. Let's start with this one, cross before pseudo element. Set content to nothing. This color is going to be the color of the one of the legs of the cross symbol, and we want each cross to be within its own cell. So we have to define its position to be absolute. We want the x to be slightly smaller than the size of the cell. So height, and the height of our cell is 100 pixels, so we are going to make it 97 pixels, and width we want 3 pixels. We can't see anything because currently we don't have any div which not only has a cell class but a cross class as well. So let's add cross in one of the cell classes. So cell and cross, there we see. Okay, now we need to make it get drawn diagonally, and for that we have to use one of the transformation, which is we have to rotate this horizontal line 45 degrees. So transform attribute, and we are going to rotate it 45 degrees. Okay, so there we see So this is, but we don't want it there. What have we done wrong? Oh, we have forgotten to set display properties of the cell itself. Where is it? So we are going to make its display property set to flex, and then we are going to align our terms to the center. And then justify content to center as well. There we go. Now we want similar properties for the after pseudo element as well, except for the fact that we want the other leg to be in the opposite direction, and we can very easily do that by making 45 degrees to be negative. There we go. Now we have to do the similar things for our sail with a circle class as well. So this is sail circle before pseudo element. We have already set the content and background colors of it. So what we need to do next is, now instead of cross we need a circle over here. So in the before part, what are we going to do is we need to define a border with radius 50%. It's going to make the edges of a box round, and if it's 50% round, so it's going to give us circle. So height should be again 97 pixels, because the height of our sail itself is 100 pixels, and the width should be again 3 pixels. Okay, now we need to define border radius to be 50%. We can't see anything because we need to have a sail with circle, circle class as well. Okay, what have we done not right? Oh yes, so width should be slightly lower than the height, which is let's say 93 pixels. Okay, now that's a circle. Now we have to make the inside of it the same color as the background color. So for that we are going to superimpose another circle with the same color as the background color, but the circle should be slightly smaller than this before circle. So we want same properties in our after pseudo element. So the height should be 93 and this one let's say 87, but we want a different color. What's happening over here? Oh, I have forgotten to define the position property. Absolute, and likewise position absolute. Okay, we can't see this circle because they both have same color, so obviously we can't see even if the one is superimposed over the other. So we need to change the color, and we have to give it the same color as the background, which is main bar. So let's move up to the main bar, this one, circle after. So we have to change the background color. Now as you can see, but I think there's still something not quite right. Don't you think this is slightly thinner than the rest? What could be the reason? Okay guys, so I have figured out the problem. So basically the reason that our circle doesn't seem to have equal width all around was because if you look at our before pseudo elements height and width, there is a difference of 4 pixels between height and width. So we have to keep the same difference between height and width in our after pseudo element as well. So as long as we keep that in mind, our circle is going to be symmetrical. Okay, so we are done with our circle as well. Now what we want is that when we are hovering over the cells which already have a symbol embossed on it, be it cross or circle, we want our cursor to change to not allowed. So for that we are going to define if a cell has circle or a cell has cross class as well, we want its cursor to be set to not allowed. Okay, now we can see when we are hovering over any cells which already have a symbol embossed on it, our cursor changes to not allowed. So now The next part is we want this cursor to turn into an X if it's player X board, and we want this cursor to turn into a circle if this is other player's board. And how do we do that? So we basically have to define again same before and after elements, but this time before and after elements of hover C2 class. And how do we know if this is player crosses board or player circles board? So for that, what we'll do, if the player is cross, then this board class also have the cross class as well. So now because this board has a cross class as well, we want to see a circle when we hover over these empty cells. So what we are going to do, this is cross, we'll move to circle. So we want all these same to appear for board with circle class, and for each cell which does not have either cross or circle there, cross and not circle. So when we hover over it, the hovers before should display this thing, and we want the same thing for after as well. Control C, this is Control V, but this time after. Okay, we must have done something wrong. Oh, circle. Now as you can see, when we are hovering over empty cells, we can see circle. Now we want to do the same for cross. So if a board has a cross class as well, so that means it's cross player's board. So when this happens, again we want similar logic. So we go to before and after C2 elements of .cell.cross. So when a board has cross class as well, then for each cell which has neither circle nor cross class, it's hover C2 elements before and after. Control C, oh sorry, this is after and this is before. So now we see X because this board class has cross with it, so that means this is X, a cross player's board. And when we'll put circle over here, so that means this board is circle player's board. We are going to obviously add and remove these classes dynamically through JavaScript. And in the JavaScript, we have to define the click event. So wherever we click, we want this X to be, our circle to be embossed permanently there like these classes. But obviously we are going to define all of these dynamically. So we have to remove the circle class from the cell as well as cross class from the cell and this class from the board as well. When the game starts, we don't want to see any grid. We want this grid to appear only when the game has been assigned 2 players. Only then the game is actually able to be played. So that's why we want this grid to be hidden. So we are going back to our grid class in our CSS file. So this is board. So its property is grid. We are going to set it to none because we don't want this to appear, but we will set this property to grid back again dynamically when the game has been assigned 2 players and it's ready to be played. Then using JavaScript, we will dynamically change this display property to grid. Then we'll be able to see the grid over here. Let's put this back again. Okay. We are done with styling. The rest of the business logic of the game is going to be defined through JavaScript, and we are going to define client side business logic and the server side business logic simultaneously so that you can understand what the relationship between them. Okay, so see you in the next tutorial.